Hey everybody, Tim here, and welcome to RodLab video tutorial number 4. In this video we're going to talk about some basic bend form analysis software usage. So over here I've already got RodLab up and running, and to get started I'm going to click this Open Bending Comparison button. And when I do that, I get this dialog, and on the left here I've got all the tapers that are stored in my RodLab taper file, or actually RodLab taper directory. And I'm going to go ahead and select this one that we just created, this 7613 LT from Russ Gidding. If I right click on that, or if I hit this button, it'll pull it over here on the right. These are the tapers we're going to analyze. And after I do that and click done, it'll pop up this taper window. And what I have here is if I had more than one taper, they'd be stacked on top of each other, but I don't. I've got a stiffness curve, and I've got this EI bend curve. I'm not going to talk about that right now. EI bend curve is something we'll use when we start doing some taper translation. But what I don't have any bend angles, any stress, wrist torque, or I don't have the bend form. So to get that, I'm going to go ahead and click this Calculate Bend Form button. And right here I come up with 3 different curves. So question would be, where did these come from? And if you look over here on the left, I've got my controls that configure how I generate the bend forms and how we load the rod. So first thing on the top in the upper left here is the acceleration factor. This is a little bit confusing because it's a composite of a couple different things. So if you imagine yourself casting a rod, you sweep your arm back to pull the line back on the back cast, and now as you bring your arm forward, when your wrist reaches somewhere about your ear, you're probably doing a couple different things. The first thing is you're accelerating the rod like straight forward, but you're also probably rotating the rod to move the tip closer toward the water surface. And both of those things are combined to make acceleration factor. Next thing is the rod butt angle. As you can see, we've got minus 25. I can kind of see that here. A rod butt angle of 0. Let's go ahead and change that. Would be straight up and down. And a negative angle would actually be leaning back like part of a back cast. Let's go back to here. Go ahead with that. Line drop angle is 15 degrees. So what you can't tell is the line is dropping about 15 degrees away from horizontal here. So I can show you that. We'll click this button to show a line and calculate the bend form. Here you can see how the line is pulling the rod a little bit down, or the rod tip a little down. I can change that maybe to 0. And if I do that, you see the line is vertical, or horizontal rather. If I change it to, like, say, a negative number, minus 10, you'll see the line is actually coming from above, and all of that will change how the rod is loaded. Next thing we're going to do is casting distance. As you can see, that's just simply the amount of line that I've got behind me, which will be the amount of line I'm casting and how much load we put at the tip. But if I make this, say, a 0, you'll see this is the first one. It's basically vertical because my acceleration factor is low. And if I accelerate that a little more, you'll see this rod is bending even though I don't have any line out, and that's actually the weight of the rod itself bending the rod. So you've got the bamboo, you've got the finish, you've got the guides, the ferrules, all of that is going to combine to bend the rod a little bit even though there's no line out. So first thing we can do, you'll notice acceleration factor is underlined in blue. If I click on that, it will set up a sweep so I can hold all these other factors the same, but sweep acceleration factor. And you see I've got 10 curves here. So these 10 curves represent the rod butt angle of minus 25, line drop of 15, casting distance of 40, and 10 curves switching between an accel factor of 1 and 7. I could also do a sweep of rod butt angle. So you see I've got minus 45 to 45. If I calculate bend form, there you can see how the rod will bend based on different rod butt angles. If I change the line drop, now it's going to go here 30, 30, 7, and 50 feet of line. And you can see how the rod will bend a little bit differently depending on how the line is pulling on it, from what angle. And again, casting distance, probably pretty straightforward. More casting distance, more line, and more load on the rod tip. So first thing here is you don't have to keep all of these the same. Everything I just showed you was a sweep of, say, acceleration factor. You can set this up however you want. You can have an acceleration factor, and I can combine that with maybe more line or less line. That's kind of not very useful because that wouldn't really simulate a casting stroke. So maybe something more like a rod butt angle. We'll start this at 25 degrees and go to minus 25. And my line drop, I'll make it a minus 10 to start out with to simulate a line dropping during a cast. So if I go ahead and calculate this one, you can kind of see I've got the rod stretch out with the line, and then I'm moving it forward and bending it more and more as I increase the acceleration factor. And you can kind of tell by this look, this doesn't really look much like a casting stroke, and that's because my initial acceleration is very low back here. So realistically, let's move that a little higher. Try again, and maybe this looks a little more like a casting stroke. Now, say for example, this was something that you wanted to use over and over again, and you wanted to be able to switch between this and other configurations. So let's go ahead and take this button. We've got 3 buttons here that say user config. I'm going to right click on user config 1. And when I do that, it'll ask me to come up with a name. I'll call this casting stroke. Okay. And now I can come back here, hit acceleration factor, and go back to that acceleration factor sweep. But if I hit this button, left click on casting stroke now, it'll go back to the settings that I just inputted, and that'll be saved. You can close RodLab down and bring it back up. All that information is saved in a config file, so hopefully that'll be a little easier way to analyze it. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there. We'll pick up some more advanced stuff in the next video. Thank you.